going to do here is this afternoon is Kelly and I had a meeting online earlier in the week, and we were trying to come at things. Kelly from the very technical point of view of things and his background and experience, and me from kind of a policy guy sort of view. And we look at everything, and we found we were in hot agreement about things, and we decided we needed to share the information that we'd come up with, and try and make the greater electric vehicle community smarter about direct current fast charging networks, and what is needed, by the three major shareholders in it: the public, utilities, and network operators. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to try and put a frame around our discussion, and then we'll kind of launch into it, and we'll have some time for some short questions afterward. So, shareholders, the public, and that's people like us driving around, and also commercial operations, utilities, and which are crown corps in many provinces, and commercial operations in some others. So we're talking at this from the BC point of view, but we're trying to generalize it for across Canada. And the charging network operators, whether they're private operations like Electrify Canada, PetroCan, Tesla, or ones that are owned by crown corporations, and who, and some of those may be a utility. Again, to put a frame on it, what does the EV fleet consist of today? We kind of broke it down this way: slow charging EVs, those who take 50 kilowatts an hour or less; fast charging EVs, which are 100 kilowatts per hour or more. And those have kind of an outsized impact on the fleet you want today and definitely in the future. The fleet in 2030, probably going to be almost all of them very fast charging electric vehicles at 150 up to 500 kilowatts, right? Because nobody's going to build an EV that charges at 50 kilowatts, except maybe Mazda. So if you were designing a direct current fast charging network, and we're only talking DCFC today, we're not talking level 1, level 2, and AC and all that good stuff. But if you're designing one from the start, what are the goals? So you'd want to maximize the EV adoption and ensure that you have a sustainable charging infrastructure. And what are the attributes of a sustainable DCFC network? You want it to be reliable. So you want it to be seamless, plug and play with minimal features, or minimal failures. So when you roll up to a DCFC, you want to get there, you want to plug in, you want to walk away, and it's going to charge every time. You don't want to be sitting there and having this conversation back and forth between the car and the charger and the network to determine how you're paying for it. It's got to roll straight through. You want a fair price for energy purchased by the public. Okay, this is where your price per kilowatt hour comes in. These 2 points are primarily what the people who are using the networks want to have out of it. You want to have maximum turnover, so little or no waiting for anybody who's coming up to the network. You want the maximum number of customers available to roll through. Fair price for the energy provided by the utility, the grid connection, and the network operator, his return on investment, both the capital expenditures and ongoing maintenance. So you see here the first two, that's what the driving public and commercial people who are using a system want. The bottom two are what the network operator and the utility people want, and what everybody wants: maximum turnover, maximum customers. Each one of those different attributes has a cost associated to it, and the price that's being charged needs to reflect that. This is where Kelly and I will sort of head into our discussion. Kelly, what do you want to say about reliability?
So this point about the seamless plug and play and stuff is very, very prominent and Chatham does not have this capability. And so we're moving into a future where stations will not have CHAdeMO connectors on it because of the requirements of to be CHAdeMO certified gets in the way of making it an easy to use station. And so the operators are aware of that. And a lot of the issues we see are because they're trying to make, as we call it, HMI interfaces. Those are the touch screens, interfaces, and tap credit card systems, having to interact with those. And then the cars have like a 60-second timeout that if you plug the car into a fast charger and you don't get the payment sorted out within 60 seconds, you end up having to unplug the car and plug it back in to make it wake up again. And so these are the some of the things that we see happening in the background that EV drivers may not be aware of that's happening. And once we get to a place where we can do this seamless plug and charge, as known as ISO 15118, that will resolve a lot of these problems and make it more Tesla-like. When you plug your Tesla in, it automatically knows who the car is. Oh, we know who the billing goes to, and it'll just start up and start charging right away. If there's a problem, you'll get notified. You didn't have to tell it who you were when you plugged in, so that it can send you an email if it's going to have that. So I'll just kind of leave that there.
Yeah, you know, you talk about reliability of the units themselves. We had to, you gave some great information on the difference between, say, a cabinet that's been built for Electrify Canada or Tesla.
Yeah, so the standalone charging stations have the big cabinet right at the connector. They are normally made up of 5 power supplies in it. Each one can output 10 kilowatts. And so when one fails, either the system was designed that one power supply is broken, it'll shut off and not provide any power. Others were trying to be smart and said, oh, well, number 3 is broken, so we'll keep one spare in the system, and now it will still charge at 50 kilowatts or whatever the rated rate was. But if 2 fail, then it would degrade it to, say, 30 kilowatts. And if another one fails, it would go down to 20 kilowatts. So on one side, if it was free, that's great, you would still be charging. But on the other side, that's where people get the feeling that, well, the oil companies are slowing down the charge, so they cost me more money.
That's right, because you're there forever.
Yeah, yeah.
And the Tesla cabinets, or rather the Tesla connectors, and the back end of the Tesla system.
Yeah, so the back end of the Tesla system, you'll see a big cube, but usually it's has wood fencing around it, so you can't really see it, but you know that there's a big box there, and it would have like 100 of these power supplies in it, and so you could have 10 of these things fail, and you would never know. It would still be able to provide full power to everybody in the park and the chargers. And Tesla is well aware of, based on their network, that they have a bunch of power supplies that have failed, and they may have 30 days to be able to get out there and replace them before more had failed and would start to cause a degradation in the performance to the drivers.
Yeah, sort of built with graceful degradation into the system. Fair price of the energy purchased by the public. Now, this is one that, and in fact, almost the entire reason we're having this conversation again is Tesla's put out a letter and VicEVA has spoken to Measurement Canada. They're the ones who sit over top of how things are sold by any metered amount in Canada, both from baloney to gasoline. We're coming at this because Tesla's put out a letter. They had recommended going to charging by the kilowatt to Measurement Canada, and Measurement Canada is not really being very responsive at the moment. So Tesla's gone out and they've asked the EV community to get behind and support this. Now, on the face of it, this is pretty much a no-brainer. Fair price for the energy purchased by the public per kilowatt hour. Yeah, this is pretty straightforward. But it's only one factor. Kelly?
Demand charges. The cost of buying the electricity in a commercial setting is not just for the number of kilowatt hours that are dispensed or sold to the commercial account. There's a thing called demand charge, which is based on what is the peak amount of power used over any 15-minute period during the month. And for a commercial account in BC through BC Hydro, that price is $12.41, I think, per kilowatt. And so if you have two 350 kilowatt DC fast chargers, it's realistic that you could end up with a bill of 700 times the $12.41 if two people with very fast charging cars showed up at the exact same time. And so you end up with almost a $9,000 bill. In the case of Petro-Canada, where they have their two 350 kilowatt stations, they only dispense about $700 worth of electricity during the month. So while I agree that yes, selling by kilowatt sounds really great and it should be part of the solution, but it can't be the only solution because it's hard to recoup the $9,000 in demand charges based on a kilowatt hour that costs 6 cents. It doesn't work out very fair to everybody, and we can go further into that later.
Discussing why demand charges even exist is another discussion on its own, really. So we'll go on to the next one. Maximum turnover. This one's pretty straightforward. A little no waiting and maximum customers served. You had a great point about sort of number of hours in service and number of people served at any one site.
A good goal of any DC fast charger is to get 6 hours of usage average on a day. And that doesn't necessarily mean every day gets 6 hours, but places in Metro Vancouver, it's more constant. It'd be easier to get 6 hours every day. But if you go to places like Hope that are on the highway, they're absolutely quiet Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but absolutely slammed Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And so they would get their 6 hours of average usage, but all jammed into the weekend. And so to push these to get 6 hours of charging, if we only charged slow charging cars, we wouldn't get that many people through the system. But if we charge really fast charging cars, we would get a lot of people through the system. And so it's trying to balance how many people we get through and how fast they're charging, and changing whether you're billed by the kilowatt hour or billed by the minute changes how long people will stay. When you're billed by the minute, I find that most people are very concerned about how many minutes are there, and so they keep an eye on their watch. But when you're billed by the kilowatt hour, you may be more likely to go and have a coffee. And if it finishes, that's great. I'll might be only there another 10 minutes before I come back with my coffee and ready to go. But those are still using up those precious minutes towards the 6 hours. When we get to 10 hours of usage a day, that's where we were just before BC Hydro enabled payment on their stations. And that's when we were getting police incidents happening at charging stations and 3-hour lineups. And people were getting very frustrated with a 10-hour wait, with a 10-hour usage, but it was okay at 6.
there we get into the sort of the blended thing about, paying for the energy you're getting, but also paying for the space. And we keep on coming back, although, VicEVA is not here to promote Tesla at all. You can certainly point out something that works. There you're charged for the time that you're using the site, but as soon as you stop using it, then the dwell charge goes up dramatically to $1, at least $1 per minute that you're still sitting there. So that really does encourage turnover.
And I would consider that's a split tier pricing model. So you're blending two pricing models together to encourage the right behavior that you're looking for.
Yeah, indeed. We'll kick on to the next one. Fair price for the energy provided by the utility to the grid connection. You touched on it a bit before. But the utility needs to be able to make their money back for providing a large connection to the site, and also the demand charges. You want to expand on that anymore?
Yeah, so demand charges are the biggest hurdle for the operator to try to recover their costs. In Quebec, Quebec Hydro has made a BR tariff, which basically means experimental tariff for DC fast charging, where they've basically eliminated the demand charges, but made instead of selling the electricity for 6 cents a kilowatt hour, they're selling it for 15 to 20 cents a kilowatt hour. So it gives a very predictable cost for the operator to be able to provide that service.
Okay, yeah, and that's probably somewhere around 3 or 4 times their actual cost to create that energy in the first place, right?
Yes, the cost of creating it is about 2 cents, and they were retailing it for 6 cents to commercial accounts, and so boosting it up to 15 to 20 is a significant jump, but it meant that you didn't have these demand charges that were unpredictable for the operator.
Right. And maybe a lot of people don't know, but every province runs its own grid system its own way. There's no sort of federal overview as to what each province, what the utilities have to do and can't do. The only thing they seem to be able to say is you can't charge by the kilowatt hour. We'll move on to the next one. Network operator return on investment. The capital expenditures and the maintenance going forward.
So that is the second most expensive thing for the operator. A DC fast charger typically costs $1 per watt that it can output. So a 50 kilowatt DC fast charger costs about $50,000 plus or minus 10%. 350 kilowatt DC fast charger costs $350,000. So the Petro-Canada two DC fast chargers cost $700,000 just for the equipment. So I look at each one of those sites cost about $1 million to set up and run, and then trying to so that works out to about $8,000 if they amortize those costs over a 10-year period with no interest, which is what they basically get from NRCan, is that NRCan will fund half of the cost of those stations, but if they ever make a penny, they have to pay half of that penny back to NRCan until they finish paying back their entire grant amount that they got.
So it's really not a grant; it's a loan.
It's an interest-free loan unless you go bankrupt, and then you don't. Then you never pay it back. Yeah.
Which kind of mitigates against having a reliable and well-maintained system.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's all sorts of weird in that. Wow. Okay, so we've run through our 5 main points here. Is there anything you'd like to if we look at all these and we say each of these has a cost associated to it, so the idea may be that Measurement Canada eventually allows for you, the consumer, to get an itemized list of charges. So you might you get it as a PDF or a link on your phone. Says, okay, you got charged this much for your kilowatt hours, this much for your for the space you were parking in while you were charging, which would then include, the network operator return on investment charge, and then maybe another one for the utility charge in there. And if you came out of there, without hogging the charger, that might be another line item that goes 0 on it, or it might start adding numbers if you hung out too long and prevented the maximum turnover sort of factor or attribute on the system. It might be a way going forward for us to get charging by kilowatt hour, but also so there's visibility for the consumer on what you're paying for, and it's also fair to everybody who's involved in it, all the shareholders. And at the end of it, we should end up with a reliable, seamless sort of DCFC network. Any last comments, Kelly, before we open up for questions?
Yeah. So what I've kind of been really pushing for as a looking forward couple years down the road, when we can get billed by the kilowatt hour, is splitting the price. As you say, you have a price for the energy, and maybe that's exactly the price that it's costing the provider to do it. And maybe there's time of use. So, if you show up at 6 p.m., maybe it's a little bit more expensive by the kilowatt, but the parking rate shouldn't be changing at that time of day, because that should be the same. But what if the operator is getting carbon credits by you filling up your car? Currently, those carbon credits are worth about 40 cents. What if you were to say, well, I'll sell you my carbon credits at 20 cents by me filling up at your station, and you discount the electricity costs from 6 cents, it goes down to negative 15 cents for me selling you the electricity, but I still have to pay the parking fee. So then we both benefit. The operator gets the extra 20 cents of carbon credits, and you sold your carbon credits, because otherwise you would collect it at home if you're in a condo and your condo was collecting carbon credits. So that was one thing I've always thought about that's reasonable, and it would push for the operator to expand their network. So if they get busy and they can't keep up, well, there should be money there for them to expand their network and keep it operating, because now it's not just trying to sell something, but someone is selling you something in a barter system at that.
That's a Canada-wide carbon credit scheme, right?
Yeah.
Right. So that is pretty important. May have to talk to you offline because, of course, this all kind of leans towards a letter that needs to go to government, and all these ideas need to be captured and then put forward so that we, the public, the people who actually pay for the service at the end of it all, have our oar in the water, as it were, and not just the other two shareholders in this system, getting all the words, the utilities and the network operators. Okay, David, you want to open up for questions?
Yeah, go for it. Anyone want to, you can pop it into the comments section if you like, or put up your hand. Anybody got questions for Kelly or Glenn on this particular subject? Fred, you look like you're just chomping at the bit there.
Don't tell me we thoroughly beat that horse to death and nobody asked any questions.
Maybe, I think maybe people have learned to accept the situation they live with.
I've got one, Dave.
Go for it.
With the carbon credit scenario, is there any way the individuals who are charging at home can get access to those carbon credits?
They belong to BC Hydro if you're in a single family home.
Ah, so how does, now in my situation, I have a basic Sun Country charger. Same as they have at the shopping centers around town and whatnot, or at least at Sanic Center. So they won't know, it's not metered separately, so they won't know what's coming through there, will they?
No, they would have to have it on a separate meter so they can account for how much energy was delivered to vehicles. To
Okay.
reduce carbon.
Yeah,
So-
and a
so
little
they're
more,
losing out-
a little more background on that too, Don. Couple of years ago, in the negotiations for the Clean Fuel Standard at the federal level, EVS had gone forward and suggested, or rather highly recommended, that people at home would be able to get in on the carbon credits for obvious reasons. And the people in Ottawa who got listened to weren't the owners. We got cut out of it.
Mhm. So, I can understand that to some extent because the utilities are putting a huge amount of investment into this stuff for providing the I guess upgrading networks and that sort of thing to be able to accommodate it, at least for the level 3 chargers. But not the level 2 chargers are not really putting anything in unless everyone puts one in on the street.
Yeah.
So it's a way for them to encourage industry to get involved, and I can see why Petro-Canada in particular, if it's getting 40 cents, it charges 58 cents, so it's doing pretty well with that if they get volume. I've hardly ever seen a car being charged to run out at Sayward on the Pat Bay Highway.
Yeah. Do you have a second question there, Don?
No.
Okay, great. Anybody else got a question? It's not often we have Kelly here to field the good questions.
There's
So
a
I have one other point to make, and it's kind of come up recently, and I'm kind of shocked that Tesla had poked Canada, Measurement Canada a couple of days ago, because Tesla and the electric circuit are both currently in contravention of the Measurement Canada regulations. When we talk about not being able to sell by the kilowatt hour because there's no certified meter, there's also no certified meter to measure kilowatts, that for them to distinguish whether or not you're charging below 50 kilowatts or below 60 kilowatts. Someone could say, well, I think I was charging at 58 kilowatts, and the charger said I was charging at 62 kilowatts, and they get put in the wrong bucket. So the tiered method is kind of illegal. No one's, don't think anybody's complained about it yet, but you know what I mean? Like, they're poking Measurement Canada to hurry up, and Measurement Canada could turn around to Electric Circuit and Tesla and say, you guys are being bad, and they come up with some penalty for doing what they're doing, even though we know why. The Tesla and Electric Circuit are just trying to work around the lack of standards right now.
Yeah. Measurement Canada has, as you and I discussed, I think all their actual research and technical people have ossified, and all they've got left is people who write words. They don't know how to deal with it.
Dave, I have another question.
No,
Based on
excuse me.
that.
I have an item in before you there, Don. Paul DeGroot on the chat is asking, are there any economies of scale in setting up a DCFC site? The basic connection to the site does not necessarily have to be duplicated for each charging station. So the per station cost for a site with 16 charges might be less than for a 4-charger site.
The installation does go down per station when you install many stations. And of course, that's what Tesla does, because that makes a lot of sense to do it that way. But it doesn't solve the demand charges issue, because your demand charges still scale vertically when you install more charging stations. So the biggest cost is demand charges. The second cost is the actual equipment. The third cost is the installation. So it does solve item 3 on the list.
Right on. So, and could rates potentially vary based on how remote geographically a charger site may be located? From Gary McKay.
So it's possible. All the discussions I've had with BC Hydro is they really didn't want to do that. They wanted to have one price for the entire network. And the reason for that is when you start varying the price, say in Boston Bar is a remote site, and maybe people would avoid that site and charge in Hope only. And so you would redistribute the congestion versus letting people decide to charge where they're actually out of power.
Right on. So John Stonier has added that Measurement Canada's consultation on oversight of level 1 and 2 charging state devices has been extended until next week, June 22nd. So you can put your comments in. He's posted the link in the chat. VicEVA and BCSEA have already submitted their comments. Thanks for that, John.
Yeah, and that's a separate conversation than what we're having today on DCFC, but thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah, right on. That's level 1 and 2 specifically he's referencing there. So Don, going back then, you've got another question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, does anybody have any insight into how much money they are losing or making on those suppliers of level 3 charging stations? Is Tesla making any money on the charging stations yet? I would imagine it'd be a long-term return on investment.
They're not making money yet. Tesla is kind of in acquisition mode. So they're basically buying up all the land that they can get that's in good locations for charging stations that will be valuable to them in the future.
Yeah, and again, they were solving the chicken and egg problem. They were presented. They decided they were going to make cars, and I think if they made $1 more than they spent, they would be more than happy. Even if they lost $100 million a year, I don't think they'd care, because of course it enables all the rest of Tesla's automotive business.
Well, McDonald's is a real estate company that finances it with hamburgers, so maybe Tesla's onto something. Barbara McCullen doesn't understand when you say that the demand charges are different for kilowatt charges than for time charges. Can you comment on that, Kelly? She's asking for clarification here.
Do you want to take this, Glenn? Maybe I'll get too technical.
Yeah. So demand charges don't really. It is the most amount of power that site has seen over a given period, a month or whatever. So if you spike above what you're expecting, you get charged at that rate for the rest of the month for all the rest of the power you've sold. So like if you have a Tesla club runs out, it goes around and fills up all the sites on a given Sunday, and we peak above, we're now, causing a lot of money, the hydro, the utility, to charge Tesla for all those extra demand charges.
So how does that differ between the two types of charging to the consumer is what she's asking.
The demand charge doesn't show up to the consumer. Demand charge is on the network operator.
Right, but how does the difference between kilowatt hour charging to the consumer and time charging to the consumer affect the demand charge? That's the confusion that we're looking at.
Well stated.
Actually, broadly, they don't.
Okay, thank you.
That's good.
Thank you.
We looked at there is a case in Oregon where this was a huge problem. It was a very remote site that saw hardly anybody ever used. One person showed up, used the charger for half an hour. The bill was $8,000 for that one charging session.
Yeah, I think the confusion was simply in the discussion that it seemed as though charging by time versus charging by kilowatt hour to the consumer somehow had an effect on that demand charge, when indeed it has nothing to do with the demand charge.
No.
That's, I think, what she was asking.
Yeah, the issue is that charging for time, it's easy to bundle, to average out what those demand costs in on a per minute basis, versus it's more difficult to base it on a kilowatt hour, saying that you've got 5 kilowatt hours in your car, and the demand, your portion of that demand charge, it seems much higher in relation to the cost per kilowatt hour.
Kelly, do you know anything about, City of Victoria is considering, and we don't have all the details yet, a kind of a monthly charger membership for some of their parkades and whatnot. So if you're a member, you get access for, do you know anything about these charger clubs?
I don't. I belong to one called the West Coast Electric Highway, which I could charge at 80 different fast charging stations all the way down from Bellingham to the California border in Oregon. And that was $20 a month. And it was a fantastic deal. And using it, I realized why that didn't work, because the people that live nearby, when I was traveling, were always the same people that lived in a condo nearby, and they were annoyed that I was interfering with their little private fast charging site that they would go to and dominate on a daily basis.
Yeah. I'll make a comment. My trailer trip through the 6 US states, I would get bills. This is all charging at Tesla supercharger sites. I would get bills from Tesla, and depending on the state I was in, I would get a price per kilowatt hour or a price per time, and it would all show up in my bills. So they were, they're pretty flexible on which jurisdiction they're in and what they can do and what they can't do. But overall, my price per kilowatt hour after exchange turned out to be 45 cents, which was probably a third of what I would have paid if I'd been driving around in a BMW X3 towing a trailer on gas. So I was still pretty happy. 45 cents a kilowatt. I was happy because it was convenient, it was reliable, it wasn't busy. Pulled into one place, an 8-bay charging setup. They were all full by the time we dropped our trailer, because there's very few places where you can just roll up in a trailer. By the time we dropped our trailer, one car had pulled out, so we technically didn't wait at all. Again, not here to promote Tesla, but here's a system that works and seems to work without a whole lot of gnashing of teeth on the political level.
I do have, that reminded me of one other thing we had talked about, which was in BC, electricity does not have tax on it. But when you go and use a DC fast charger, you get charged GST on it because it's a service. If we were to split it up apart so that you got a portion of your bill was the kilowatt hours and a portion of was the service, you would then be able to get tax exemption on the energy delivered to your car, instead of having to pay GST on that amount.
Yeah. Some of the bills I got did not have tax on them, but I was in some tax-free states too. So Oregon. Has anybody here traveled to Alberta? What do they put on there? Is there any tax labeled on the bills there?
I just did a road trip across Canada, and as a chartered accountant, I appreciate the comment of being what items would be taxable and what items wouldn't be if we delineated the bills. I have a question for Kelly. Is it still the case that we are running around with a handful of network, either credit cards or apps on your phone? And what's the state of roaming across networks? When we'll be able to get, say, one network card and it'll roam across other networks? Can you make some comments about that?
Yeah, so currently that's about 90% complete right now. The issues that are happening is there's two different types of RFID cards. There's ISO 14443A, which is also known as MyFare. Think of it as a transit card, like the Compass card in Vancouver. And then you have ISO 15693, which is more of key fobs for buildings. you would, so get access to your parking in your building. And those two standards aren't compatible. And so all OCPP chargers use the ISO 1444 version, and Add Energy and ChargePoint use the other standard. So trying to mix and match all these different networks, it's easy to roam by using the app, but currently trying to use one card gets into trouble based on who made the station you're at and whether or not it can read the different types of cards that you have. So if you're at a BC Hydro station, you can use your BC Hydro card, your Flow card, your ChargePoint card. But if you go to a Green Lot station, it only reads ISO 14443. So the ChargePoint and Flow BC Hydro do not work. And so they're trying to resolve that, and maybe they'll need to send out a new BC Hydro card if you have a BC Hydro card that will have both chips in it. And so depending on which station you're at, you would be able to roam using a card. Using credit cards is a problem right now, just because of the cost of providing that service and the temperature range requirements in Canada. So Flow has made a lot of efforts to make sure that credit cards and RFID cards would read at any temperature by putting a heat trace on the actual RFID reader to keep it warm during the winter and cooling during the summer. But the other operators just bolt on a standard Moneris RFID tap reader, which does not have that type of range of temperatures that it can support. So if it gets too cold or too wet, all of a sudden it won't detect your credit card or your RFID card. So those are some of the issues that we're seeing.
So is the future applications, everything by application, by mobile application?
It looks like the government wants it to move to credit card. But there's actually a wide variety of payment methods now available. And you have to think about people that are unbanked. What about if you're 16 years old and you don't have a credit card? You have to support debit card. Well, that means you have to have a PIN pad attached to it as well, not just the tap read. And if you're doing that type of transaction, then you have to provide a paper copy of the receipt. And if the charging station is up on the Coquihalla, and who's going to go check on it every couple hours to make sure there's paper in the printer? And then you have the Apple Pays, the Google Pays, the Alipay, all the new ways of dealing with it. And that requires make sure we have network capabilities. So yeah, and then there's whether or not we should support physical money, dollar bill readers, and who's going to maintain that. So it's probably going to be and most of the above, so supporting debit, credit. But yeah, our costs will go up trying to maintain printer paper stuff. So the maintenance stuff that people don't think about too much at a gas station, because there's always someone inside the gas station that can go out and change paper and reset things.
It almost makes one think that those sort of restrictions are the old world, and even the current infrastructure trying to desperately grasp at straws to stay in the biz.
Yeah,
But that's just I'm just being a conspiracy theorist on that. Kelly, did you want to talk about? We will dip into, say, level 1 and level 2 charging in multi-unit residential buildings, MURBs, and how setting up a MURB for charging works with regard to carbon credits.
so in a MURB, if the strata owns the electrical supply, so they pay the bill for all the charging in the underground or in the parking, then as long as they have at least 5 chargers, they can then qualify as a part 3 fuel supplier. and in BC and submit their energy dispense to vehicles as a carbon credits. And currently it's about 45 cents per kilowatt hour that the strata could earn on carbon credits.
If you could talk to a typical setup in a MURB, let's say they're going to put in 10 chargers, and those are going to stay in use for each giving out 5 kilowatts a day. No, the math makes itself, and you run 30 cars through it. That would have an eventual payoff for that setup, especially if it's a shared charger system.
So I'm a fairly new EV owner. I live in a 40-year-old steel and concrete condo, and I'm voluntarily paying the strata some dollars a month to just plug into a 110 outlet. And I understand that it's not legal for the strata to ask that of me, because Measurement Canada hasn't set up standards for knowing exactly how much energy I'm using. But I went to the strata and offered it because I'm the first person with an EV. And I'm interested in this whole concept of carbon credits in a MURB. Does carbon credits mean that there is a reduction for the strata on its energy bill?
Not on the energy bill, but come March 31st, they submit their energy usage information, and it then is sold, and so they would be able to sell that on the open market for the carbon trading. So the oil companies would then buy up these carbon credits, and the strata would get a check for selling those carbon credits.
Okay, thank you.
I can provide a little bit more information on that. I've been helping out on a number of condos, and I'm sort of figuring out what the payback would be on our condo here where I live in downtown Vancouver, 165 suites, 2007 building. Just some very preliminary high-level numbers. So if our project with just the BC government grant for BC Ready BC infrastructure, EV infrastructure, basically the bottom line was this: assuming a modest increase in electric cars every year, in our building, I assumed we'd gain 10 cars a year over the next, once we have all the infrastructure in place, we're going to start with 10 cars. That the carbon credits at the current price would basically pay back the investment within 7 years. And then after that, we would have approximately 80 to 100 cars in our building that would be generating about $1,000 a year. So that is significant money. Now, this all assumes that the price of carbon stays the same. I mean, it could be that this program that brings on so many condos could flood the market with credits. I'm not sure that will happen. And I know that the oil industry still wants to sell more oil, and this is the price for them to sell more oil, is to buy these carbon credits. And the way the program works with the low carbon fuel standard is that they have to reduce their carbon intensity across all of the oil they sell by 1% every year, effective January 1st. So it's getting harder for them to meet their carbon intensity target. So I would predict that the price of carbon is going to be fairly flat, if not go up. If the price of carbon goes down, then we'll be winning on climate change, and then we can all celebrate anyway. But it's a very attractive return on investment right now. And the other thing that I'm doing right now is, as of May 11th, the federal program kicked in for 50% additional funding for condos. So right now there's an incredible triple win: the Clean BC standard grants, the federal grant, and then the carbon credits to pay back after the fact. The problem with the federal program in our building, we had approved the project with just the provincial funding. And now the federal funding has come up. So what we're going to do is we're going to proceed to apply for the federal funding. I've had a meeting with the council. They're asking me to help them out with this. And it's a crazy situation. They could literally put chargers in every one of the 165 stalls, and it would be less than the budget that we approved. If we get but then we're going to have a situation where you'd have, 80% of the chargers just glowing there in the dark and nobody using them because there won't be the electric cars to use them. What I'm going to suggest, what I have suggested to the strata is, we are right downtown. We're basically on City Gate near Science World in Northeast Falls Creek. I'm suggesting to them that we actually put a DC fast charger on our right out front of our building where we have, there's allocated curbside space that's currently a no parking zone. And we're right, like very close to all the downtown core and all of the things. And through that, we will generate a lot more electricity going through that DC fast charge. We will charge for the services and generate a much bigger carbon credit because of that higher use of electricity. Because quite frankly, residential charging at level 1 or level 2 is, people don't drive that much, especially if you're living downtown Vancouver. But in our area, the public, I think we would be able to attract a lot of DC fast charging, and that might be very attractive. And that's what the federal grant will pay for. The federal grant requires that you have to buy a minimum of 20 level 2 chargers, or you put in a level 3 charger, basically as small as 25 kilowatts. So it's a very attractive situation right now, but it's hot. It's very tight in time. You have to be somebody at your strata has to say, yes, we have financing in place for it. So unless you've had an AGM, or you can call an SGM in a relatively short time frame and get it approved. So this is what I'm doing with a number of condos, and I'm helping them out to do that. The biggest problem is getting the approval to do it, but it's like 75 to 75% of your costs can be covered through the stacking of both those programs. It's a very attractive short-term opportunity.
Yeah.
John, how much is a 25 kilowatt charger?
Well, I would say, according to Kelly, probably about $25,000-$30,000.
And you say 70% of that could be covered under the grant?
Yeah, the entire project you can stack up to 75%. So yeah, so it's a bit of that's part of the services I'm providing for these condos, is sort of calculating out the optimal thing. And then there's the other thing you have to show that you've got permits. It's a lot of work. And it's a lot to get done before August 11th, which is the drop dead date for applying for these grants.
So John, John, you're saying it's a lot of work. Do you charge by the time, or how much energy you put into the project?
I'm just basically,
That's a joke, actually. But
yeah. What I'm actually doing is I spec'd it out at about average 24 hours worth of work. So
yeah,
thanks for that. So
that is great work, John.
No, that's
really
awesome.
Really good at doing it.
well,
Exactly.
it's unexpected because I didn't expect to be here, but it was just hitting me in the face that there's a real need for all this work to be done. So stay tuned. I'll tell you more later.
Yeah. I think something that we need to talk about in all these things, whether it's level 1, level 2, or direct charge fast charging, direct current fast charging, is that editorially we want it all to be fair to all the people involved in it. If we make it more fair for the consumer than everybody else in the system, the utilities and the network operators, we don't end up with a reliable, supportable, sustainable system. If we make it so that the other two get everything they want, then we can't afford it. So it all has to work hand in glove. And for the foreseeable future, that requires government to be involved, and even in the infrastructure of it, especially for DCFC, there's a definite place for government to be involved up front. Every chunk of infrastructure we have that supports this entire country, when established, always had large trucks of government money, provincial or federal, making it happen. And some of those things that were proven that can be made profitable down the line can be sold off to private industry. Yeah, that can happen, but up front, government needs to keep their hand in it and make sure it's fair for all involved. There's the editorial for the day.
Well, I continue to think about, DC fast charging is going to be there when you extrapolate. I'm looking at the whole, EVAs like ours, we're the people that should be thinking about the bigger picture. Like, we need to be thinking 5-10 years down the road. And so these discussions on DC fast charge are great. This is exactly what we should be doing. We should be exploring these things and figuring out what is the future going to be, and how can we make sure that we get there more in a straight line than making mistakes and coming back. I guess I have, as some of you know, I have an interest in how do we electrify our heavy duty fleet, our big trucks and things. And I have talked in the past about hydrogen, but there's problems on hydrogen and there's problems on battery. And I had this trip across Canada, road trip, just 3 weeks ago. I traveled in a gas car with a friend of mine back to Thunder Bay. And I'm thinking about trains. Trains are electric vehicles with diesel generators on board, right? And I crossed the border across Highway 3 into Alberta, and there was rail lines, there was a huge number of wind turbines, and there's transmission towers. And I'm going, we know we need to interconnect our province's electrical systems better. With all these wind turbines, there is resources there. And could we not do all three along the rail lines? Could we have distributed power, big power lines? Could we have, we have wind turbines that can feed into those resources. We can electrify the rail system. And for trucks, I think there is a problem with trucks and batteries. Batteries are way too heavy. They cut into the payload. And we have a problem. There isn't enough batteries out there to build enough electric cars.
I'm gonna interrupt you a bit there, John. We actually have an entire presentation on this, which we can probably send you the link to.
Oh, good. Well,
this week, or actually a couple things have come in since you last looked at it. Federal government has turned around and given an extra 1,000 kilograms, 1 metric ton, for zero emission vehicles, both hydrogen and battery, sort of a waiver on their maximum road impact. And one of the bigger things that was going to be kind of a holdup for battery electric Class 8 trucking was trying to get enough electricity into the battery. Well, the Charlin organization, which are 200 companies, have been working since 2018. And this week they announced that they've actually come up with a new standard, and it's anywhere from 1 megawatt to 3.75 megawatts hours to charge a vehicle. So if you're running around in a Class 8 truck and it's got 750 kilowatts because you want it to have something like 600 or 700 kilometers of range, getting a charge will not be a problem. Both the time it takes for a bio break for the driver, that thing is charged and it's ready to go again.
Well, I'm coming around. I don't know if this is viable yet because but I think the solution for main road trucking on our major highways are going to be things like catenary systems, overhead systems for trucks, so you can charge while you're on the road. You can share, when there's a Coquihalla Highway, you can have the trucks going down, charging the trucks going up to help balance out the load. I think, or there's always talk about wireless charging embedded in the road. I'm not convinced that that actually works because of the inefficiencies, but the catenary overhead charging, and that's how they're going to do the rails. That's how they do it in Europe. So, I mean, that might be the long-term solution. And maybe there, with all that electrical infrastructure to support heavy-duty trucks, there'll be a lot more infrastructure available to charge cars and along our major highways. And that's where we need the DC fast charging for cars. So I'm hoping that that's where we're going to end up in 5-10 years, but it's still not clear at this point.
Well, you're entirely right. 95% of Canadians live within 100 kilometers of the Trans-Canada Highway and its offshoot running through Saskatchewan and Alberta. So, and that's just happens to be where all the power lines go a long time too. So, yeah, this is all can be done. And in fact, we have done a proposal on this for Class 8 trucking, and it's surprisingly cheap compared to big infrastructure projects. So, but that's another day. I think we can put a cap in this one. It's unfortunate we're not getting our second guest yet, but this has been great because we've come across and knocked a lot of topics on the head, and I hope we've provided some illumination for everyone here. We don't have all the solutions, but at least we understand the question a whole lot better. Any wrap up comment there, Kelly?
See, we had a question from Barbara McClellan in the chat saying it doesn't matter so much what the cost per kilowatt is, as long as it's the same for everyone. And the problem is fairness, and so that's kind of the issue that we're trying to face, is that maybe fair doesn't mean equal price for everybody. When you go to a store and you buy a bottle of soda, you pay a lot more for a small bottle than you do for a big one. And so who should get the discount if you're buying? So if we're getting someone to buy 5 kilowatt hours of electricity at a fast charger, they take half an hour, versus someone that can take 100 kilowatt hours in the same half hour, who should get the discount? Is it the guy that bought 5 kilowatt hours or the guy that got 100 kilowatt hours? And normally the retail idea is that if you're buying in bulk, you're going to get a discount.
Yeah, the economies of scale.
Yeah, but I agree that the price per kilowatt should be at least part of the costs, and not either way. Not saying, oh, it's only per kilowatt, and it's not only per minute, because either way has winners and losers, and it may not be who we want to have be the winner or loser in using the system.
Exactly. Okay, David, I'm going to roll it back over to you because I know you've got some other topics that you wanted to talk about.
We have, thank you very much, Kelly. We'll have the chance before we go flying off here. I really appreciate your willingness to take part in this little chat there with Glenn and help to hopefully clear the muddy water around charging issues and so on. It's got certain complexities to it, of course, that we're all sort of wrap our brains around. So it's good to know we've got a local person who's hot on it. So anyway, thank you very much for your contribution. That's awesome.
You're welcome.
Yeah. For the rest of the day, Kelly's here. I think he might hang around. If he does, don't be afraid to come up with the questions for him. But we're going to, for this event, now we'll continue chat. We'll carry on with just discussion about perhaps what's going on this summer a bit. The CRD has sent us an invitation to participate in 3 events that I'll have to look it up here. I don't have it right in front of me, that they're planning to have public get-togethers around charging issues and locations, and I'm not even sure what they have in mind. I don't think they've specified it. Jim, do you have access to those dates?
Yeah, what we've got so far is Saturday, July 23rd, a West Shore event at Belmont Secondary in Langford. Saturday, the 30th, a Peninsula event at Mary Winspear Center in Sydney. And August 13th, a core event, hopefully, at Commotion's Lansdowne campus. And I know they're scheduling 2 more for sure, and maybe 3.
Oh,
We've got so far. And this morning I heard that the Oak Bay Car Show is also coming back on the July 23rd weekend. I don't know if we're participating in that or not yet. So
Actually, I bugged them and I said, hey, you know, because they're looking for volunteers. I said, hey, are you doing Electric Avenue again? And they said, well, we're not sure, but you know, can you barbecue? I said, well, I'd rather like talk electric cars, so get back to me.
back on the CRD thing, I think they are even talking about test drives and so on. I do now. It's starting to come back to me. The conversation went back in February, but they are also working with e-mobility. I think part of it is she's trying to Ruth is trying to organize and get around the logistics of a drive event like they used to have those drive electric events. I think they have some fairly ambitious plans, so that's good. Anyhow, just so people are aware that that's in the works, the discussions, nothing's firm yet, but we have indicated that we would try to work with them and cooperate. There might be a need for, or a call out for volunteers, so keep those events in mind. I think that we're not doing any other car shows except perhaps some of us might go up to Parksville. Is that right?
yeah, we're trying to work out something with Mid-Island. The Parksville show does charge you to be there to display, and they also charge you for parking. So what we're trying to do is people may want to go up and see all the classic cars, but then we want to do a meetup somewhere nearby where we're not dinging people.
Well, I volunteer to go up and go into the lion's den again and brave all the gently warmed hydrocarbons coming at me from 300 different cars. Because I've got family up there, so I've got somewhere to stay overnight and then show up bright and early for the 7 a.m. Roll through. I'll just need a point of contact sort of thing.
Yeah, and Mid-Island is supplying a couple of cars as well. So, I think in the past we've done like 10 cars or something like that. But
Yeah,
Last time I was there, I think it was about that.
we had
Although
six cars up there, and we were a big hit.
Yeah, the Model 3 is really new still then though, and that isn't at all considered a draw particularly anymore, right? Everybody's seen a Tesla on the road. We've got about 25 new models available, and some of those would certainly be of interest. Speaking of which, our guest who was unable to make it here today, Adam Davies, the general manager of Volvo Cars of Victoria, had invited myself and Glenn and Jim, the 3 of us anyway, were managed to go to a community market type style event. I think it was their annual customer appreciation thing, really. But they had a lot of different community groups there, the bee lovers and the electric bike rental people, and so a food truck and a coffee truck, and the rugby club was there with a car full of rugby balls. We got to guess how many were in there. Anyways, a funny event.
Classic Volvo club with their gently warmed hydrocarbons.
The Volvo Club of Victoria, and there was the one BEV in the garage with the hood open and all the plastic taken out, so you could see where the front was, and all the tubes and wires. And oh my God, I thought these cars were supposed to be simple. But anyway, it was good to see the new Volvo BEV, and I enjoyed it. We got to talk to some other vendors, but again, it was really a Volvo event, so we were there to support the whole electric aspect, and we were invited. It was a community-focused event. The public was invited, able to attend, and despite the coolness in the parking lot,
How many models does Volvo actually have now that are electric?
Oh, who knows, hundreds. I don't know.
Well, they have 2 fully electric. No, sorry, one fully electric for Volvo. That's the XC40. No, sorry, 2. The C40 and the XC40 are fully electric. One's all-wheel drive, one isn't.
And all the rest are hybrid.
All the rest are some form of hybrid. And I think, David, did they say 2023 or 2024, they will have no pure gassers left in their
Yeah,
lineup?
no, 2022 is the last year they're making.
Okay.
This is it, yeah.
Yeah. So after that, everything will be some flavor of hybrid and fully electric.
Are
So
they selling Polestars as well?
Polestar is a separate company altogether. They broke it off, split it off. I don't know how you spell it. I don't know how you shake it. I don't know how you look at it. I don't even care. I'm a consumer. I know they're owned by Geely, but they don't say the word Geely, and they don't put the two, Polestar and Volvo, together in one sentence. They operate as separate companies completely somehow. So
Yeah.
what that means in the
Something like
machinations
Kia and
behind,
Hyundai?
but they do not have a Polestar at that dealership. And if you want to buy a Polestar, you buy it online or elsewhere.
yeah,
And
so
apparently you can get the Polestar serviced at the Volvo centers.
Could be,
until
yeah.
they get their own service set up.
Yeah, there's something going with Polestar. They're building their own world. So
yeah, and it has to do a lot with Geely being very sensitive to the marketing. And when they bought Volvo, they probably didn't care at all about any of the physical product they had. They were buying that logo, they're buying that name, they were buying the public good feelings about their product,
Goodwill.
right?
yeah, I think the
All good
Polestar
ones.
brand, they saw the Polestar brand as being more of their muscle car thing. But anyhow, we did have Polestar at the Sequoia Coffee Place there last year for a looky-loos, and the design idiom following the Dodge Challenger or whatever was kind of like, what? I was quite struck by that. However, one thing I wanted to say was there was about, had to be at least 6 or so young employees there, men and women. And I talked to quite a few of them. And I was fascinated in the garage where they had the service bay open with the car in it. I was able to talk quite a while to the young guys that would work on these cars. And so I discussed this, the qualifications, etc. So far, apparently the hybrid aspect and indeed the electric car aspect to maintenance, certification, training and certification is solely still with the dealerships, different manufacturers. So he went to Burnaby for the or Richmond for the training, but it was done at a Volvo dealership over there. And it had, so I asked about the BCIT and other colleges having electric car programs, but he said that he didn't know anything of that. It wasn't there yet. He felt that the automotive manufacturers were still doing it. One thing he said was interesting is that there's lots to learn, but also that in between each car, they were very different. So I found that a bit interesting because I know some manufacturers do the opposite and there's a lot of continuity between their brand of their models.
Mhm.
But he said that even with the two BEVs that were there was quite a distinct difference between them. So there was, it makes it for a maintenance challenge in a way. We didn't go much more in depth into maintenance. It's a new car. I don't think there's been a lot. The other thing was that Adam had suggested that this year they hope to deliver 50 of their BEVs from that dealership.
I'm pretty sure it was 50 or 15.
Yeah, no,
I wasn't worried because he was going to come on today and tell us all about it. But
no, I'm sure
Yeah.
he said 50, but still, yes, yeah, something happened. He was with family today, so I'm not going to make him feel too guilty. That's for sure.
No.
Yeah, the Volkswagen representative that was at the Arena EV night said that they told me they had over 300 ID4s on order.
That's
And they had
Volkswagen.
already delivered about 30 or 40 of them. And I don't know where it stands today, but he said that was more pre-orders than all the rest of their models combined. Yeah.
So that's 2.5 days of Tesla deliveries in Vancouver.
Still?
Still.
Do you guys know that Hertz is now renting them at
Yeah.
Vancouver Airport?
Oh, in Canada.
I went by yesterday and I counted 35 in their parking
Oh.
lot. They have
so they're not renting
charging
them, they have them
stations
available.
set up, level 2s. And when the cars come back, the guys write on the window in like a marker, the percentage of the battery. And then I guess it gets detailed, run over to one of the chargers that they have, and then start topping up. So I went online to see how much they're charging per day for these. And you can check it out yourself, but they're around 350 for a Model 3. They also have Model
Wow.
Ys. So it's changing.
Just as a cost comparison, yesterday I booked a car in Halifax. 2 weeks ago, they had no cars available for rent from any company in Halifax. And if I lucked out and got one yesterday at 120 for a compact car, Toyota Corolla size. And I also went on to Turo to see what they had. And so this is like $1,200 for a week. With taxes and everything in, the Turo for an EV was close to 4,000 for a week.
Sounds like demand charges to me.
And the same thing,
Halifax is
and the
much more
same thing with
expensive
a
because I
Mustang
had
and
a
a
friend
big
call
truck.
me today and asked me, he couldn't find anything in Halifax for under $2,700 for 2 weeks.
Yeah,
Wow.
no, Halifax is really very short. We just went on, like we'd canceled our whole trip to the Maritimes. And then just yesterday when we were booking to get to Ontario, we just well, let's just check and see if there's anything's changed in Halifax, and one popped up. So we grabbed it right away. Anyway,
of times
I've got something to add. I was speaking a couple of weeks ago to the instructor, the head of the automotive training program at Camosun. His name is Patrick Jones, and they are adapting the program that BCIT has developed, and they've customized it a bit themselves. And they have a program that's running. I'm not sure if it's actually had a class through it. I think it has had one class through it at least. But the students come in are basically they're all certified mechanics. They do an 8-hour I think it's 8-hour pre-registration or pre-attendance, and then they have a 1-week program. But the most exciting part is Patrick is very keen to come on and do a Zoom session with us, or to do a session perhaps at Camosun. And if you're going to be doing something through the CRD at Camosun, we may be able to combine those. But Patrick was really quite keen to do something with the EV club. He wasn't aware of the club, and at least when I spoke to him, he didn't appear to be. But he's very enthusiastic about his program, and would be a great guest for us.
Thanks for that,
Great.
Don. We'll get our finder's fee out to you shortly.
No problem. I have a question unrelated for the Leaf owners, and I know Kelly, you're one. Has anybody had problem with when it rains, water collecting? I've got water dripping from the tunnel on the passenger side front seat into the front seat wheel well. Whenever it rains, I get water in there. And I'm wondering if anyone else has had any of that sort of an issue with the Leaf. And I just went out this morning to check around my windshield because my mechanic that lives across the street said, check your windshield, double check that. So I checked it, and on the side pillar of the windshield on the passenger side, the plastic or the rubber that's in there, whatever it is, has retracted about 1/4 of an inch on one joint. So that might be what's causing it. But I'm just wondering if anyone else has had any issues like that with the Leaf.
I have not, but the drain there fills, you get, pine needles and other debris piles up in that drain. Maybe something's connected to that, but I've not had that problem.
Yeah. It's funny when I mop it up and then I go around a corner and it's more spills out again. So it's collecting something in there and it spills when you go around the
I
corner.
had an old Pontiac that did that.
Don, I'd like to point out, I saw your comment in the chat about Chatamo. And so last July, NRCan had dropped the requirement for Chatamo to be installed on new stations. So it's now Tesla and CCS. So if Tesla's installing, you have to install CCS to get NRCan funding, but no more Chatamo. So it takes 18 months from the time basically that you get approval to get the funding to 18 months before it's installed and operational. So that changed last July, should start to happen by December. So as of January 2023, I won't expect to see any new CHAdeMO connectors on any charging stations installed.
Yeah, there's been some controversy back in Ontario because a lot of the Ivy stations, they've hooked up a Tesla connector to their CHAdeMO, and they don't actually have a place on the station to hang it up. So they're leaving the cables on the floor. I don't know why they didn't go with what, is it EV Go in the US? They have 3 connectors coming out of their stations. You've got the CCS, you have the CHAdeMO, and then you have the Tesla connector. And the Tesla line actually connects into the CHAdeMO. So every vehicle can cover it.
I've tried to buy that adapter. So it's not that the station has CCS coming out of the station. It doesn't have the Tesla coming out of the station. It's it just has an adapter that's bolted onto the side of the station, which then you plug the CHAdeMO connector into, and the Tesla connector comes out the back, and it's like the adapter, except it has a 9-foot cable. I tried to buy that, and Tesla said, yeah, that sounds great. Okay, well, okay, I have $20,000. How do I buy 2 of them for my stations at BCIT? And then crickets. And they stopped returning my call.
So is
So I
that
thought it
similar
was a
to the adapter
fantastic
you can
thing.
buy from Tesla? So $700, like our club has one.
But it's the one that's bolted to the side of the charger is like a big square box with so it mounts better, and then has a 9-foot cable on it. But
Nice.
other than that, it's just the adapter. Right? So,
For 20 grand.
well, I had 20 grand burning a hole from Enercan funding. And I was like, well, if I don't spend it by March 31st, it goes away. And so I was in a hurry to try to buy them. And they wouldn't return my call.
Oh, geez. They've
Yeah.
got so much money, they don't even want yours, Kelly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The club has 5 CHAdeMO adapters for rent, and it is actually a significant source of revenue for our huge, thriving budget.
Really?
Really, yes.
If people actually use them?
Yes, then in the summer, there's oftentimes all 4 or 5. Well, we got a 5th one last summer because all 4 were rented out for weeks and weeks on end.
Wow.
The new CCS adapter that they're selling from South Korea, one of our guys bought one. It came within the week.
Yeah.
It was $309 US. He tried it the other day and it works great, but it was only a BC Hydro station. He's on his way to Calgary, and he hopes today to use it in Canmore at an Electrify Canada station. But
It'll be interesting to see the maximum power he gets out of it.
yeah, there has been reports of over 200 kilowatts on them from the US guys, but we'll
Sizzle.
see.
So is that a conversion from a CCS to Tesla?
Yes,
Or from, yes,
Yeah.
okay.
and it's much smaller than the CHAdeMO adapter.
Yeah,
It's
it's,
easier to
Oh,
carry,
so-
half the price, almost half the price of what the CHAdeMO adapter is. Plus, it charges a lot quicker. So you'll probably see a lot more Teslas at CCS stations now because of this device.
Great.
Only where there isn't a Tesla station already.
Well,
Yeah.
some of the Tesla people want to use the CCS like a Petrocan or whatever because
Yeah.
it's less expensive than using the Tesla now that they've put up their rates.
Well, okay, and that's why I was very interested in what my trip was all about. And coming down to 40, the average is 45 cents per kilowatt hour, which was fine. So yeah, there's a lot of people didn't have a lot of experience, and they reacted to all those different charging price rate structures. I found, and I was pulling in at like 10-15% of charge and banging it back up to 80. So I was using it, and still 45 cents a kilowatt. I could care less. I would love to see what the Petro-Canada ones are, though. That would be interesting.
Yeah,
Aren't they charging 58 cents a minute?
Sorry?
Isn't Petro-Canada charging 58 cents a minute?
27
Oh, 27 cents a minute, wow, that's- okay,
in BC. It's different in each province. And
okay,
Electrify Canada is much more expensive once you get over 90 kilowatts. Then you're up to the next tier, which I think was around 57 cents a minute.
okay.
Unless you buy their $4 a month package, then you get a cheaper rate.
Interesting.
Anyway, guys, good chatting with you. Enjoy the day. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you very much. I have a question from a friend in Manitoba who's wanting to convert a bicycle to an EV bike. And do any of you have any experience with EV bike conversions?
I do know there's a British company, Dan, I can remember their name, but what they do is essentially they sell you a front wheel with a motor in the center,
Yeah,
a battery pack, which you can strap onto your bike, and a little controller up front. So it's just a matter of popping off your front wheel, popping this on, strapping all the crap together, and going.
The guys we were talking to yesterday from Ride the Glide said that Amazon has a bicycle conversion kit now.
Yeah.
okay, this one he was referring to was, he asked me if I had heard anything about it. It's a RUBBEEX, so Ruby X. And I don't know where he's come across it. I know a guy here who has done one with their Bupang or something, a Chinese company. I think this is probably Chinese too. And there was a Canadian company called Bionics, which went out of business just as the bicycle craze took over, the e-bike craze took off. But it had a system similar to what you're referring to, Glenn. Still see a few around town.
Right.
Okay, thanks, guys. Just inquiring.
Yeah, I'm just having a quick look here.
I just checked on Amazon. You can get them for $500. It's
Yeah.
For whose is that?
Pardon me?
Whose is that for 500?
On Amazon.
What
There's
name of the company?
There's like 10 of them.
Pardon me?
There's like 10 of them.
Oh, 10 of them. Okay, okay.
Yeah, same on Walmart, e-bike conversion kits.
I don't think Don goes to Walmart.
No.
I don't.
Keen So e-bike kit, looser brushless wheel, Gupez hub motor.
Okay.
Yeah, I should do it on my bike.
You need the exercise, Glenn.
Well, you know, I cycle commuted for 27 years of my military career, and my knees tell me all about it every day. But now I live up on a little hillock, so it's like I got to go up 100 meters just to get home.
Yeah.
Anywhere I go, and it sucks.
That's where all your conditioning comes in.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's where e-assist comes in.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. I'll pass that on to him as well. Good. So are we're taking the rest of the summer off other than these events with Cabosun?
Well, it's going to be busier than ever with these events. So I think from the Zoom perspective, this might be it. But stay tuned.
Yeah.
You never
Don't
know.
book that family vacation without our permission.
No, okay. Well, thanks very much. And to you in particular, Kelly, great presentation today. And Dave, or Glenn, putting that together. It was very helpful.
Very good.
Yeah,
Thanks, Don.
well, Kelly's
Okay.
been awesome.
Bye now.
Go, Kelly, go.
Bye.
See you, Don.